Okay, so today is day 34 of Bible in 90 Days, or What's in the Bible, where we're going through the entire Bible just to get a feel of what the entire Bible says, what the story of the Bible talks about. So at the moment we're in the book of Second Chronicles. Today is actually the last day in Second Chronicles, from chapter 24 all the way to 36. Then tomorrow we're going to get into Ezra. So as Rich said, as we were looking through the book of Second Chronicles, it was really more details about the kings of Judah that reigned over Judah at the time when the kingdom was split, because we know that the kingdom was split after Solomon's sin, which then led to Rehoboam taking over Judah and Jeroboam taking over, the entire or the remaining tribes of Israel. So Second Chronicles 24, Joash, we have a king called Joash who repaired the temple and all his reforms. But after that, Judah turns to idolatry after the death of Jehoiada, because Jehoiada was the person who actually raised Joash after Athaliah had done whatever she had done. So in this whole time, he was there as like a mentor and teaching him what to do, etc. But as soon as he died, it seems as if Joash simply lost his way. But even in this time when Judah was sinning, we hear in verse 19 it says, "Yet God sent prophets among them to bring them back to the Lord. They testified against them, but they would not listen." So this is where, as I was talking about last time, when we were looking at Elijah and Elisha and Isaiah, etc., that there were prophets that God was always sending if the people were not doing the things that he had told them to do. We then also hear about the killing of Zechariah the prophet. So Judah, at this point in Israel, they were well known for killing prophets, that people who were sent by God to tell them the truth, to tell them what to do, they would just end up killing them, because whatever message that they were bringing, they were not interested in hearing about it. So as a result of that, Judah and Jerusalem, they get attacked by Aram because of this unfaithfulness, and we hear that Joash was actually eventually killed by his servants. Second Chronicles 25, Amaziah reigns, but then he reigns and kind of served God, but not wholeheartedly. We hear about a war against Seir, which he won, through God's, assistance. He then afterwards, after they'd actually won the war against Seir, he then started worshipping the gods of Seir, which there's actually a verse that said that didn't make any sense, that the gods, of Seir could not actually save, Seir. But so why would he then go and worship their gods? But that's why he did anyway. But then we hear that Judah is defeated by Israel in battle, and this was actually ordained by God. Second Chronicles 26, Uzziah reigns in righteousness. So there's another king who comes. He reigned in righteousness, and he had a lot of victories at war. We hear about the technological advancements that he made in Judah, but then his eventual downfall was pride, and he thought he could be a priest himself. So he went and actually tried to offer, incense in the temple, by which he was chased out, and he was actually cursed with leprosy, and he lived excluded until his death. And during that time, his son Jotham was actually reigning. Second Chronicles 27, Jotham then reigns in righteousness, and he was actually aided by God throughout his reign. Second Chronicles 28, Ahaz succeeds Jotham, and he reigns in sin. He did not listen to what God was saying, and the result of that was there was wars and captivity and poverty, within Judah. Second Chronicles 29. Then we get Hezekiah, who was now reigning in Judah. We've actually spoke about him before. Some time was dedicated to him because he was a great king. But we know that he reigns in righteousness. Then he restores temple worship and the reforms and the offerings, and he tried to do everything according to what God wanted. Chapter 30, Hezekiah calls for a celebration of the Passover, which is something that they had not done, for a very long time. It actually says that some people came, but other people actually mocked them, like, why would we even do the Passover again? But Hezekiah was trying to get Israel, Judah, back, to worshiping God in the way that he wanted to do. So it actually tells us that the Passover had not been celebrated since Solomon's days. So a long time had passed since they were doing, the Passover. Chapter 31, we hear that the Levites started getting their support again, because what the tribes would give to the temple was what the Levites actually lived on. But because nobody was now coming to the temple, etc., the Levites didn't have anything to to live on. But we hear that the support for the Levites starts coming back again, and it was so much that they had to start building stores, so as to store this. And it just again underscores that Hezekiah followed God, with all his heart. Chapter 32, we hear about the attack of Assyria, which is King Sennacherib. He came to try and attack Judah when Hezekiah was still, was still king, and he said all these pompous and prideful things. Then we hear that God actually intervened after Hezekiah and Isaiah prayed to God for deliverance. We then hear about Hezekiah's sickness and how he got healed and his eventual pride, but he also then repented, from that pride. Also, we hear about the riches of Hezekiah. He was a really rich king, at this time, and obviously his eventual death. Chapter 33, Hezekiah's son Manasseh is now, the king, but he leads the people in a lot of sin until Assyria came in captivity. So he was captured because of the sin and the unfaithfulness to God. He then was actually restored because he repented, of his sins. We then hear about Ammon succeeding him and his reign, obviously, in sin as well, and his eventual death there. Chapter 34. Josiah, we have about Josiah, who was a good king who rededicated the covenant with the people. And in his time, the book of law was actually found, and he read it and he saw the things that were in there. So he went back to the people that they would start following the law again. Second Chronicles 35, Josiah also had the Passover celebrated, but we hear that he eventually dies at war. Second Chronicles 36, which is today's last chapter, says, after Jehoash, Jehoiakim and other kings of Judah, this is when Nebuchadnezzar, and his armies, the Chaldeans, they come in and they take them captive. We hear about Prophet Jeremiah's ministry at this time. So Jeremiah has got an entire book dedicated to him. So there's Isaiah as well. So we're going to read those books, in the following weeks or whatever. And at this point, all of the Israelites and people in Judah, they're taking into exile. It actually says so that the land could have its Sabbaths, because they had stopped following the law, so they stopped doing agriculture the way that God had told them to. So it said that for these 70 years that they would be in exile, the land would actually have its rest. Then it skips over actually quite a bit, although it's just the next verse that then says a king called King Cyrus of the Persians proclaimed that the people could go back and build the temple, because, as you know, the temple had been destroyed. So there's some other detail between when they went to exile in Babylon all the way to when the Persians actually came in, and this eventual decree that was done by by King Cyrus. So we will find out that story as we go on. But tomorrow is actually a great day, because in Ezra we get to hear some of the stories about how they came back to build the temple and what happened whilst they were in captivity. So hopefully that's that's helpful. I'll see you guys tomorrow.